in your hospital room.
Yeah. Whoa.
Everybody, my gosh, welcome to another day of DragonCon Goes Virtual. We all decided, against our own better judgment, to be awake right now. At DragonCon, it would be even worse, but we're awake in our own homes.
I only do this for you, Joe.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Today, we're going to talk about sci-fi cartoons on Saturday morning. And first off, I would like to issue a big old up yours to everybody on YouTube who makes those videos that say 30 weirdest sci-fi cartoons of the 80s. They're all weird. And also an up yours to those people who go sci-fi and fantasy TV cartoon intros on YouTube from Saturday mornings. And they include He-Man and G.I. Joe. Those were not on Saturday morning.
That's right. Weekday afternoons.
Can I join in on the hate, Joe? Because I hate all the people who say sci-fi cartoons of the 80s all suck because they were just trying to sell toys.
That's the best part.
I know.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, oh, I can have a great toy and a great story? Okay. That's fine.
I can have both? Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So, because it is a thing that I would do when we did this live in person at the DragonCon, I will be enjoying cereal while we talk about this thing. Unfortunately, because I'm at home and I'm eating healthy cereal, fruit and yogurt Special K.
Oh,
with,
no.
You're doing it wrong.
with almond milk. Thank you.
Joe, what happened to Frankenberry?
That's
There
right.
you go. I feel your pain. I had low cholesterol Cheerios, so I feel you, Joe.
You've taken the joy out of Saturday morning.
Totally.
Yeah. So
I think all the cereal monsters are now involved in some kind of scandal, one kind of scandal or another. Some embezzling that went on back a couple years ago.
At some point, what we have to do, Kevin has suggested this panel like years ago. We do a Sci-Fighters where all the cereal mascots just fight each other.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
That'd be awesome.
Yes.
We're going to have to
I think we're all pretty much aware that Fruit Brute would win. I think that's,
I feel like you're right.
Here's my idea, actually. We can share it with our viewing audience right now. That the concept for the Sci-Fighters is cereal mascots versus serial killers. Like we put in Jason and Mike Myers and Freddy Krueger, versus Captain Crunch and Toucan Sam and whatnot.
I've got a trump card because Batman had a cereal in the late 80s. So,
So did
Mr. T.
That's right, Mr. T, yes.
So, let's go around and introduce everybody. One internet away from me. Nathan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Joe. How are you?
I'm eating fruit and yogurt cereal, so okay. All right, good. And 2 internets away from me, Michael.
Are we doing like the introduction, like where we pimp ourselves, or is this the...
Do it.
Yeah,
okay.
Nathan.
Okay, sorry. I was just trying to make sure I was doing it right. My name is Michael Bailey. I'm a podcaster. I talk about comics and stuff over at the Fortress of Baileytude Podcasting Network, and it's weird doing this and not being at con. It makes me sad, but I'm happy to be here with you guys. I guess I should keep talking to let Joe. So
Maybe
one internet down from Joe.
Pause for cereal.
One internet down from Joe. We have
Kevin.
Darin. Or is it Kevin or is it Joe? Oh, for me or Joe?
Everybody sees something
It
different.
doesn't matter.
Kevin's under you, Michael, from my view.
Yeah, from my view, too.
Yeah.
Here's the story.
All right, I'll go. I'll talk. I'm Kevin. I do a podcast called The Flopcast. It's a silly, goofy, ridiculous, geeky show, part of the ESO network. And we are pretty obsessed with Saturday morning cartoons. on the Flopcast. Is someone about to be devoured by Cujo? What's going on?
Yeah, my dog saw something outside. It could be a deer, it could be a leaf, it could be the Amazon Prime van. We don't know.
James, do you live with Fang Face?
Kind of. He kind of looks like Fang Face. He's a 100-pound Labradoodle.
Oh my God, that is terrifying.
Yeah. So.
Well, James, as long as you have the floor, who are you?
I am James Palmer. I write science fiction and pulp adventure. You can check my stuff out at jamespalmerbooks.net. I've got a free book up there. So yeah, come check it out. It's awesome.
And of course, all the links to everybody's things will be in our show notes and junk afterward. But now, finally, Mr. Darin Bush.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Darin Bush. You can find my author's page on Amazon.com. I got a few short stories on the Kindle. I am also a content creator for a lot of Atlanta sci-fi and fantasy conventions. But I think primarily at this point, I am going to go ahead and go, hi, I'm Darin. I'm a Saturday morning cartoon junkie. Don't judge.
There's no judgment. This is a no judgment zone, for goodness sake. And if you do judge, you must be one of those people that makes those YouTube videos that say, well, G.I. Joe was my favorite Saturday morning cartoon.
This is a thing for this is like a sticking point for you, isn't it, Joe?
Yeah. I agree with Joe on this one because I'll see those videos that are like best Saturday morning cartoons, and it's all weekday morning or weekday afternoon stuff, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
We are coming out swinging this morning.
So, let's see. Specifically, I wanted to focus for the purposes of this thing on clearly sci-fi stuff. Most, I would say, Saturday morning cartoons in general are of a speculative fictional nature. But let's start off my personal favorite. Top two. Kevin has my other personal favorite in his background.
Oh,
but the challenge of the Super Friends. But yeah, you know what? Let's do Super Friends first because it lasted, I would say, the longest.
Yeah.
That was like 73 through 85?
86. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, what a run.
Yeah, and it went through like 15 different iterations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it kept changing the title.
Yeah, and if you try to collect this on DVD, good luck, because they do not put them out in any kind of order. But yeah, it started off as an hour-long adventure series where you had Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman, and Robin, with Wendy, Marvin, and Wonder Dog, because it was a Hanna-Barbera show. It had to have a dog.
It had to be. It's superheroes, but it's also Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, and which is, I think, Hanna-Barbera's mission statement through most of the 70s. But it was them. They didn't call it the Justice League of America because they wanted to stay away from jingoism, because it was 1973 and it wasn't really that good in the United States at the time. And they didn't fight supervillains. They fought like aliens coming to the Earth to do stuff, and it usually had like an ecology base to it. And then it switched out to they switched out Wendy and Marvin with Zan and Jaina and Gleek. I would say CW star now, Gleek, thanks to the Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah, he counts.
Yeah, so he counts. And still not really fighting like supervillains until the iteration that's behind Kevin, which is Challenge of the Super Friends, which I think is usually considered the favorite because it was the Justice League of America versus the Legion of Doom. And then it went in from an hour to a half hour to 7-minute, 3 7-minute shorts. And then finally in 84 or 85, they switched it to the Superpowers iteration, and completely changed the animation for the last season. So it's a weird show because it has so many different versions of it, but everyone just seems to remember the same three things.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a kid, it was the 80s, the 85 version that you were talking about. I watched the other ones in syndication, like, cable, USA Channel or whatever would run like all the rest of them. But I remember really loving those ones with Darkseid in the 80s and Firestorm, because I was like, I was really impressed by those concepts, because they were not characters that I was familiar with from other media.
Mm-hmm.
And we got action figures from that show too, the Superpowers figures that Kenner made, which I loved. I had a bunch of those, and they would do, not to get off on toys, but they would, they would do characters that you never saw on the show, which I appreciated. Yeah. I thought that was cool. Had my Martian Manhunter figure, and he was never in the cartoon, and Orion and everything. So I thought that was kind of that's probably my favorite. My second favorite is, of course, Challenge of the Super Friends, where they fought the Legion of Doom every week.
Oh, actually, I'll be right back.
He has a visual aid.
It's got to be good for Kevin.
Okay, I'm back. I realized hanging right over my computer here. This is pretty recent, but these are three of the ethnic heroes that were added, created for the Super Friends.
Yes, Black Vulcan, Samurai, Apache Chief, and Eldorado.
Eldorado is missing from this three-pack, but yeah, that was their well-meaning.
The Kenner line did a Samurai figure, even though he wasn't on Superpowers, but they did. I had that figure. It was a cool figure.
So did Black Lightning not exist yet when they did Black Vulcan?
No, Black Lightning existed, but they didn't want to have to pay Black Lightning's creator, Tony Isabella, so they just made a Black Lightning ripoff character instead.
Very correct. Yeah.
Who didn't wear pants.
Yeah,
that's right. They also save money on pants.
That.
But because it was on for so long, and as Nathan mentioned, it ran in syndication after it was Saturday morning run. I think for like several generations of like people, this was their introduction to the DC universe.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
They dug deep with some of these, and with Challenge of the Super Friends, they straight up adapted, barely, but they adapted stories from the comics. The one that always sticks with me is the origin of Lex Luthor, where he everyone makes fun of it, but Superboy blows out the lab fire, and it causes all his hair to fall out, and that's what got him all angry and stuff. But if you weren't reading the comics, this was kind of your window into the larger DC universe. I mean, Green Arrow, like we just wrapped up 7.5 seasons of Arrow, but he only got one shot on this. So but if you were watching that episode, you got to see this cool Bowman who teamed up with the Super Friends. And I think there was a little, I think this show is also why Aquaman is the butt of so many jokes, unfortunately, even though he's perfectly used on the show. Everyone likes to make fun of him. Well, not now because it's Jason Momoa, but no, it was a really cool show to watch when you're a kid. Not all of them hold up today, I will say, but some of them are still really good. My favorite episode of the entire thing was when Superman went to the evil universe, and Robin had a cheesy like teenage mustache, and Batman was all in red for some reason. That's probably my favorite episode.
I did not prepare beforehand, of course, because it's me. But I also have a super
nice
figure.
There's never been this many Apache Chiefs on one screen at one time.
Man, he is ripped.
He is ripped.
I mean, Super Friends really had a life beyond that, because even when they did the Justice League cartoon, they adapted Apache Chief and some of those other characters into the Justice League animated show. So I mean,
they did. There was one episode where they had kind of thinly veiled versions of the Wonder Twins and Apache Chief, and
which is why the four main heroes of the Justice League of that show were Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, and Aquaman. It was it's like one of those things where you're like, okay, it's the best type of Easter egg because they never hung a lantern on it. Like if you knew what was going on, you got a lot out of it. But if you didn't, it was still a good enough story that you could that you could enjoy the show on its own merits.
And Michael, what color would that lantern have been?
Yellow.
Yeah,
there we go.
My the episode of the Challenge of the Super Friends that I remember the most, maybe the one that had the most effect on me, was when they were all murdered on Saturday morning. They found they had some kind of alien gizmo. I forget exactly what, but each gizmo was attuned to the weaknesses of the hero.
That one too.
And it killed Batman. And my thought was, is it just bullets?
Well, you mentioned kind of more like adult things happening. The last iteration, which was the Galactic Guardians iteration, was the first time in adapted material that you saw the death of the Waynes on animation or live action. They made a mention of it like in the first episode of the Adam West series, but they never talked about it. You actually see the Waynes going into the alley. Now, like every time they bring out a new iteration of Batman, you have to have, as my friend Zachy refers to it, the ritual killing of the Waynes. But it was this Scarecrow episode that actually felt more like an episode of Batman, the animated series from the 90s, than the Super Friends. So. The animation style changed completely in the last season too. For most of the time, they were working off of Alex Toth, a brilliant comic book artist, and his designs. But they went for the more sleeker, like Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, praise be his name, designs for the last one. And the only other change I really noticed was Batman's voice went from Olin Soleil to Adam West for the last one, and Wonder Woman's voice got a little higher. And I have no idea why they did that. I like, why do you wait until the very last season to do that?
Yeah. So Super Friends, we could probably do a whole panel.
Oh, yeah.
We will.
Yes, we definitely could, yes. Enough episodes, certainly.
Yeah. Secondly, the one that I would like to speak about was Thundarr the Barbarian.
Yes. We did do a panel on that.
Again, yes.
That was like 5 years ago, but
yeah.
It's on the Flopcast, actually. There's a Flopcast episode. You can hear the audio from our Thundarr panel, which was really fun.
You can hear me crunching.
Was that set in the far off future of 1994? Was it?
I thought it was 1999. Was it 94? I thought it was 99. Okay. Yeah, that was my first exposure to sci fantasy. And that just blew my mind as a kid, was the idea like the future could be like the medieval fantasy type settings, but with the trappings of our modern time, the derelicts of our modern times there. And that was really cool. And then the mixture of like, here's some sci-fi elements, and you might see a wizard too. It's fun.
When I was a kid watching this show, even then I was like, okay, wait a minute. A bunch of D&D players watched way too much Star Wars and then came up with this idea. I'm like, isn't that Chewbacca?
No, it's Ookla. It's not Chewbacca. It's
completely
Ookla.
Different.
You cannot pay in this film. It's not a lightsaber, it's a sun sword.
100% different.
In a legally binding way.
Right.
Allegedly, it has some similarity, but we cannot confirm or deny that.
And that was also Alex Toth designs on the lead characters, and then all the supporting characters were designed by Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
And it shows, you can tell.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
There's in the opening, there's the guy that he turns his head around.
Yeah, Gemini.
And then the helmet flips up, and there's his face. That's total Kirby.
Yep. Oh yeah, it looks like Darkseid.
It looks like Darkseid. Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
And sounds like
sounds like Fred Flintstone. Yes.
Oh, Fred Flint, the guy who plays the voice of Fred Flintstone, is in everything.
Henry Corden.
In this era, and
now I want Darkseid to be voiced as Fred Flintstone. I think that would add a gravitas to that character we have yet to see. But no, Thundarr, like Nathan said, there were a lot of shows we watched as kids because it was on. And we didn't have like 50 billion channels. We had, at best, 3. So sometimes you can count PBS, but they rarely showed cartoons. So, I'm wondering how many of these are loved because it was all we had, rather than the quality of the show. But I think it was the designs of Thundarr that made it so memorable, because it did have kind of a Star Wars feel, but it also... It's like basically it's the bridge between Star Wars and He-Man almost.
Yeah.
Thundarr holds up. There's so many shows like we love them because they were on, and so we watched them and we were kids and we have that nostalgic attachment. But what a quality show that was! Like they really put such care into the creation of that, the writing, the art, the backgrounds. There's little details because the little hints of our civilization, the remains of it as they're walking through this post-apocalyptic world. That you see stuff from our current society in wreckage. It was really special.
There was a Jaws poster.
Yeah.
There was a Revenge of the Jedi poster.
Yes.
It's an alternate future. It's not.
Yeah,
this future.
surely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, the moon split in half before they changed the name to Return of the Jedi. Clearly.
Yeah.
It's the old future.
They would travel around, so every episode was set in a different actual location, and there would be. They'd be in New York City, or there's an episode that's set in Massachusetts, which we watched for the Flopcast because we are in Massachusetts right now. And there are like highway signs and things for specific towns in Massachusetts in that episode.
No way. That's great.
I think there's an Atlanta sign in one of them too. One of the
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
Well, clearly, the world didn't do great after.
You don't remember, Joe, about 20 years ago when the moon exploded? That was a rough
Yeah,
My favorite thing about the Atlanta episode is that traffic was still terrible.
It's always one-way street.
So.
The people at Dragon Con didn't even notice. It was business as usual at Dragon Con in Atlanta when the world exploded.
You still had a hard time getting a hotel room.
Yeah, we didn't notice. Yeah. We were busy.
So I'm assuming Thundarr needed like a tree made out of peaches or something like that. Or something weird going on there.
Yes,
surely.
That would be hilarious, though. Like if they had done a Thundarr episode. I don't even know if Dragon Con existed back then, but it was like a cult now, where it's like people who met every year, and they worship at some hotel, one of the hotels. Yeah.
Thundarr is one of the. I want them at some point to just do more Thundarr, because everybody who makes cartoons now are our age. Mm-hmm. So it's time.
Other shows are getting a reboot. Why not Thundarr?
Come on.
They reboot everything, so it's strange that it hasn't happened yet. It's got to happen at some point.
Series at some point, I'm sure. Netflix
one of these
will
days.
pick it up.
Yeah. So let's see. Movie. I'll
tell you what. When I think of Saturday morning science fiction, the big ones for me is the Filmation live action trilogy of Arc 2, Space Academy, and Jason of Star Command. I love those shows, and especially Arc 2 is remarkable. The Space Academy and Jason of Star Command are connected. They're like the Jason of Star Command grew directly out of Space Academy. But before that, Arc 2 was the first one they did, and that was around 1975 or so, I think. And it was a giant vehicle, like a land vehicle, like a giant, crazy, long, it looked like the space shuttle almost, just driving around the desert. And the concept was this team. It was post-apocalyptic, again, like Thundarr, but this was live action, and this was a team that was driving around trying to restore civilization. So it was a very skeptic and science-themed show. Like they'd find these weird little communities of mutant people and crazed villagers who believed in magic men and stuff, and they would come and try to teach science as they were traveling around. So and they had a talking chimpanzee.
that makes everything better. And I realize now, Kevin, upon you mentioning Arc 2, that every year at Dragon Con, somehow we bring up Arc 2. Every year I think, I'm going to go back and watch Arc 2. And then Dragon Con comes back around, and I remember, dang it, I didn't go back.
It's terrific. It's really a cool show. It holds up. And,
the plot of it, I mean, it sounds really prescient to our times. That wasn't my dog. Who was that? It's startlingly prescient to our times because what they do sounds like exactly what I do on Facebook on a weekly basis.
Yes.
So I vaguely remember that show. I was younger. I'm
it was cool. About 10 or 12 years ago. I don't remember
Jason of Star Command or the Space Academy at all.
Space Academy.
I do remember watching a little bit of Arc 2. It's kind of vague. I remember they fought Robbie the Robot in one episode.
Space Academy was set like on a satellite space station, and it was a group of kids, being trained to work in outer space. And Jonathan Harris was on it. Dr. Smith from Lost in Space, he was on it, and James Doohan.
My favorite thing, the DVDs of both of those shows came out a few years ago. And the toy model that they used for Space Academy, if in the DVD extras they showed you, if you turn it around like this, it's the Jason of Star Command. They used the same model.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they repurposed everything. Because Jason of Star Command kind of spun out of Space Academy. And that one had Sid Haig, the late great Sid Haig, as the villain, and he had that crazy helmet with the one red eye on it. So this was like the Star Wars era, and kids were desperate for science fiction, outer space stuff on TV, and Filmation was delivering with these.
Filmation, I would watch and will watch anything Filmation because they crazy.
Oh yeah,
they did that live action Ghostbusters thing.
I do love the Ghostbusters story that they said, you know what, we're going to try to sue the pants off of a major motion picture for a thing we did 20 years ago with Larry Storch
and a guy in a gorilla suit,
and it worked because they had to change the name of the Ghostbusters cartoon on Saturday morning. Because of
the real Ghostbusters, yeah.
I love that. But there was a lot that Ghostbusters thing, live action, and then they did a cartoon in syndication with the voice of Larry Storch. So it all comes back to Storch. But Darin, have you Saturday morning sci-fi, live action, or cartoon? Throw out one.
You guys covered all of my highlights. I'm struggling to find one that you haven't mentioned, except maybe the Smurfs, if you count that as science fiction.
Yeah, I was so. Again, we're coming back to a theme of me being angry on Saturday morning. I didn't like the Smurfs at the time, but I've come around.
Well, to be fair, the Smurfs kind of took over NBC. There was like one year where they had an hour and a half straight of Smurfs cartoons. I get
somehow they're like, look, we got to make as many Smurfs cartoons as possible.
That one feels like it lasted as long as the Super Friends did. Only it didn't change formats; it stayed Smurfs.
And it was an hour and a half instead of.
Yeah, and we all kind of we aged out of it. When we got too old for it, we quit watching it.
Yeah, that's another one that was in syndication and running on Saturday morning at the same time. You could get all the reruns in syndication, and then it was still doing new episodes. Yeah.
But actually, Joe, the real answer to your question is not an entire half-hour show. It was a third of a half-hour show, which was still one of my favorites of all time, is Super Chicken.
I think that may be Evan's favorite also.
Nice.
I do
Enjoy the
enjoy a
jungle.
good chicken.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Super Chicken. The premise of Super Chicken, if you don't remember, but you should, is this mild-mannered billionaire chicken would drink a super sauce and become the worst cape superhero ever, and his sidekick, who was played by a lion, would constantly be the one that was slightly off center of the bad guy's explosion. You know, so the opposite. Super Chicken would always be right there in the middle of the explosion, and the lion would be standing right in the epicenter of the explosion. He'd be fine. So, like, half of Super Chicken's lines were.
So what about Land of the Lost?
Oh,
Love that one.
and again,
That
we've
was
done
my
whole panels
Right.
on Land of the Lost.
Favorite of the Marty Krofft stuff for sure.
Well, another really cool one that like kept going. Like I watched it on Saturday morning, but well after when it actually aired, because you know it was just so good that they just kept playing it. You know, so yeah, that's a really good one.
Well,
And
they
it
had,
was written by a lot of the Star Trek writers from the original Star Trek series.
Yep. David Gerald. I think Larry Niven wrote some episodes. There's some really good sense of wonder stuff in there. Like what are the pylons? What do they do? What's that stuff with Enoch and the crystals and everything?
Walter Koenig wrote an episode.
A lot of good stuff in there. Yeah.
So a Star Trek
did.
actor wrote a Land of the Lost episode.
Somebody,
right.
well, one of our nerd crew said, "Oh gosh, I forget the story. It's not mine, but I don't remember." But they said they went up to Koenig at DragonCon, and the only thing they wanted to talk about was Land of the Lost, and he was super into it because nobody ever wants to talk about Land of the Lost with him.
Yep.
I love that, but Land of the Lost is another one that super holds up, and it's also pretty freaking dark because they are trapped, and it's bad. They live in a cave,
Right, with the same clothes.
the same. They only packed one. I guess all their changes of clothes fell out of the canoe when they went.
Right.
"Ah!"
But they never get dirty.
One of my favorite Dragon Con things that I've gotten to do with you folks and as on the American Sci-Fi Classics track, we got Will, Holly, and Chaka as guests a few years ago, and one of our buddies who was in a band in Atlanta called the Geeks, Bo Belaski, when we were in the big ballroom right before the cast members came out, he played the Land of the Lost theme and brought them out that way. And we had a big sing-along, and I'm pretty sure that is on our YouTube channel, but I will post a link to that. That was one of the coolest things that I've ever been a part of.
They were terrific. And,
Thank
to have Philip Paley there, Chaka, to complete that trio was so special because, man, the Pikuni, Chaka's people, they were so bizarre. And that was a real language. They hired, that's the care that they were putting into Land of the Lost. They hired a linguist to develop a Pikuni language. That was an actual, limited, not a complex language, but they crafted the Pikuni language for that show.
That's so great.
Amazing.
There's so much, really. There's so much life left in these things that I want them to do more of those things. But also, besides that, the original things are still good too.
Yep. My other favorite Land of the Lost trivia is the Sleestaks. Of course, we all love the Sleestaks, the giant, hissing green lizard monster people. And there were actually only 3 Sleestaks. It seemed like there were dozens because they would shoot the show, carefully, so they'd run by and there's another one. But you never see more than 3 Sleestaks at the same time. They only had 3.
Yeah,
also,
right on the cheap.
they were very tall. They wanted the Sleestaks to be tall, so they hired college basketball players to play the Sleestaks, including future NBA star Bill Laimbeer, who was the center for the Detroit Pistons in the 80s and 90s. He was a Sleestak. His name is in the credits. You watch the opening credits, and it includes the name William Laimbeer.
That's great.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
And I think you could see a little Sleestack in his style of playing when he got to the NBA. He took that with him.
The hissing. Is
Yeah,
what
a lot
he
of
did.
hissing. A lot of hissing.
All away from him.
He would
Yeah,
throw a net over a guy sometimes to stop him. He'd do whatever. Oh, yeah. He had a slingshot. He was a dangerous guy in basketball.
You don't want to mess with that guy.
No. Then Sid and Marty Krofft, that was Land of the Lost was just such a serious take on science fiction. But then they kept going after that, those mid-'70s kind of science fiction shows where they just went complete comedy with Lost Saucer and Far Out Space Nuts, which ran the same year. It was Gilligan's Island in space, essentially, literally, because they got Bob Denver.
Yeah, they got.
Was that the pitch meeting?
Yeah.
And Jim Neighbors was on the other one.
Yeah, Lost Saucer was Jim Neighbors and Ruth
Buzzy.
Yes,
Yeah.
and Ruth Buzzy as
So
androids.
good.
I was just fascinated by those two, just because they had those space suits with the blinking lights on them.
The
And
buttons.
I watched Lost Saucer every week because I just stared at the blinking lights on the android suits. I was
Clearly.
very, very
Right.
easily entertained in the 70s.
I saw those as reruns. They they repackaged them, and they would have several episodes, kind of different episodes put together. So you would get a Land of the Lost, and then Lost Saucer, and then like Dr. Shrinker or something, or Electra Woman and Dyna Girl. They would change it up like that. They'd be one that was different. So yeah, I enjoyed those.
I don't want to derail the panel entirely, but I do want to say 3 words: Bigfoot and Wild Boy.
Oh,
Okay,
come on.
because
Well, if you weren't Kevin Wood, so it's a 50-50 shot of who's going to get there first.
It came up on the Flopcast a couple of weeks ago. We were talking to somebody who is a fan of showing up early at the Classics track room at Dragon Con, because early in the morning you're showing weird Saturday morning stuff. And my friend Kate said to me, I'd never seen or heard of Bigfoot and Wild Boy until I started coming to the Classics track, and now I think I've seen every episode over the years.
That's one of those that I do not remember. Like, I did not see that one.
oh, James. Oh,
I know I'm missing out. I'm missing out. I know Wild Boy is your spirit animal, Joe.
really is.
So,
It was interesting though that sci-fi in Saturday morning kind of evolved over like the 70s and 80s. Like in the early 80s, it was really, like Thundarr the Barbarian was trying to kind of get that Star Wars feel. But by like 84, 85, you had things like Kid Video, which was trying to capitalize on like the MTV generation. You have Robbie Wrist on that one. I was going to try to beat Kevin to that one because I know. But it was really
we did a whole Robbie Wrist panel last year.
Yeah, but it was
we
just
very
like one of
pro
those
Robbie Wrist around here.
But it was one of those concepts where they were trying to do like a young like rock band, but they got trapped in the flip side, and they had like the weird. You always had to have the weird like sidekick. But then there was, okay, we're going to take something that isn't normally science fiction, and we're going to make it science fiction. So we're going to have the Fonz and the Happy Days gang. They time traveled, correct?
Yes. It was
Gilligan. Yeah, it was Gilligan's Island
saucer,
in space. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Gilligan's Planet. They did Gilligan's Planet, which was Gilligan's Island, trapped on another planet. Fonz and the Happy Days gang. They were flying around in a flying saucer, but they were not. Maybe once in a while they'd go into outer space, but normally they were just traveling through time in a flying saucer. And it was Fonz and Richie and Ralph and a time travel space girl named Cupcake.
Cupcake. I forgot her name.
and there was a dog too, because
there was a dog.
The
The dog's name was Mr. Cool.
Mr. Cool. Of course, because of course it was. What else would it be? It wouldn't be Rover.
No,
the Happy Days guys did their real voices too. It was Henry Winkler and Ron Howard and Donnie Most did their actual voices on that show.
Yeah.
Well, and they did that treatment too with some other TV shows. They did Punky Brewster, where she finds a little magical creature. They did the Gary Coleman show where he was an angel.
Yep.
Yeah, he was dead. The Gary Coleman
dead, right?
Dead.
The Mr. T show.
Show about a dead child.
Yeah,
but then so was Casper.
Mr. T show with the gymnast, that was awesome. But the dog with the mohawk, I loved.
Yes, Mr. T's dog had a mohawk.
I barely remember that show, but I remember Mr. T fighting Robot Mr. T.
Sure.
Yes, that was great.
Yeah.
But there was no Mr. T couldn't, punch or destroy anything because it was Saturday morning. So there was a lot of throwing.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking to what Michael was saying about the evolution of science fiction and Saturday morning, live action show that I remember from the late 80s was Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future, which is a series done by a guy you might have heard of called J. Michael Straczynski.
Yes.
And it was serialized storytelling. It was, story arcs and pre-planned, ideas in a half-hour live action show set in a post-apocalyptic future where it was basically Judgment Day. They lived in the Terminator future, but they were these 5 superheroes that basically had these devices that allowed them to have this armor just instantly appear around them that allowed them to fight on the level with machines. And they were trying to save the last living humans from, though they called it being digitized, but basically it was death. I mean,
and it was a toy crossover because you could buy the toys and then blast the things on the screen. And in my recollection, when they put those out on DVD, maybe 10 years ago, the toy still worked. You could still blast the things if you could still had a working toy from 20 years earlier.
Yeah, I never got to experience the toy aspect of it just because in those days my money was all saved to go to NES games, so I never, I stopped buying toys at that point. Basically,
I only had a couple of the figures, and they were kind of cheaply made. The show was much better than the toy line.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's another one that still holds up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to our comment section is exploding, but, which is great. That's exactly what I want. But I wanted to mention a Saturday morning series that I've rewatched recently, Star Trek, the animated series.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yes. I've been watching that on Netflix too, and I enjoy it. It's like watching the original show from the 60s.
It's better than it had any right to be.
Yeah.
It has that feel. It's the same. It's almost the same era. It's just a few years later. It's the same actors doing the voices. It's the same writers writing scripts. It's like if 60s Star Trek had an unlimited special effects budget.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like about it is there's so many things to like about it. I am obsessed with people going back into it and pulling stuff out of it as Easter eggs and other stuff in modern day Star Trek, because they did that again recently on the new Lower Decks cartoon show. They mentioned, I stand corrected. They did it on the Picard show. They mentioned the Larry Niven characters on the Picard show because Larry Niven, one of his people,
it's considered canon. The show is considered canon.
There were cat people created by Larry Niven in his non-Star Trek novels that are now Star Trek canon according to the animated series, and then Riker mentions them on an episode of Star Trek Picard a few months ago, and I went and I might have been one of 3 people that did that, but okay.
I like that they had non-human bridge crew on the animated series. Very non-human, not like Spock with it's just some ears. You got a guy with 3 arms, and you've got a woman that's got like a wolf face or something like that. So yeah.
Well, I think the Star Trek series, much like Droids and the Ewoks in the 80s, was just another when the main thing was no longer producing new episodes. It was a way to kind of have your fix of that. Now, the quality of Droids and Ewoks is questionable. I remember watching both, but it always felt like out of obligation. I'm into Star Wars, so I have to watch these cartoons. But it is always kind of interesting to see them trying to pull things from those, things that were kind of throwaway at the time. But now that geek culture is culture, everything kind of comes back.
Those were weird cartoons, and they were done by Nelvana, which was the Canadian animation studio that did the original Boba Fett cartoon in the holiday special. They used that same studio for Droids and Ewoks.
Ha ha! In your face, George Lucas, who said that is so good. Ewoks and Droids needs to be on the Disney Plus so I can watch it when I want to. But I don't want to watch it, but I want the option.
Right.
Joe, I will defend your right. I will defend your right to not watch it whenever you want to.
I want it to be there, and then me to say I will not watch that today.
Only if we get the Ewok TV movies.
Where are those?
We got to get those.
In those.
Yeah, it's like they're pretending those didn't happen, just like they do with the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Don't get me started. I'm already on it.
We are very pro holiday special around here.
We have a really complicated political structure, and our platforms are really bizarre here.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just glad to be part of the group. Is what I'm saying.
Well, actually, Michael, that brings up something controversial that I wanted to ask you guys, which is, do you think that there's something missing in our culture now that we don't have the Saturday morning slot forced upon us?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes and no. Go ahead, Michael. You go.
It's weird because we enjoyed it because it was all we had.
Mm-hmm.
And now that everything, like most things you want to watch, are available at your fingertips pretty much whenever you want to watch it. Mm-hmm. So we've lost that kind of the specialness of it. Like there are people walking around Earth right now that have no concept that to watch something, you had to be in front of your TV at a particular time on a particular day. Mm-hmm. And if you missed it, it never happened.
Saturday morning was an event.
Yeah.
That was your time, and you waited. And I've talked about this before. I would be up at 4 or 5 in the morning watching the test pattern on the TV, waiting for the station to start so I could sit through the Star Spangled Banner and get to Davy and Goliath.
Well, and
that every week.
And it's everywhere now. You can watch SpongeBob SquarePants at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have access to everything now, and so we don't really care about anything.
The urgency is gone, and the sense that if I don't watch this now, I will never see this again is gone.
Yeah, I learned how to work the VCR just so that I could set the timer, because unlike Kevin, I didn't want to wake up at 4 a.m, but I wanted to watch all the shows, so I would record everything and then watch it later, and that's what got me into starting recording my own stuff where it was now I have to switch out all the tapes once I did wake up because I wanted this tape to just be X-Men, and I wanted this tape to just be Spider-Man, and so I started archiving my episodes so I could binge watch them later. So yeah.
I have another.
We were the first binge watchers, the ones who put them all on one VHS tape.
Another science fiction Saturday morning recommendation I have before we run out of time. There's a show that you never really hear people talk about, and there's a DVD set available, so it's out there. You can get it from the early 80s. There's a cartoon called Space Stars. It was an hour-long series. It's Hanna-Barbera. And it was an anthology series, which included Space Ghost and Herculoids. They made these were new. These were shows from the 60s. They made new episodes of Space Ghost and Herculoids, as well as a couple of new series. There was one called Teen Force and one called Space Ace and the Space Mutts. And the Space Mutts included Astro from the Jetsons. So it was all these little cartoons plus little extra segments and outer space facts and code games and stuff. And all the cartoons would cross over with each other. So the Herculoids would pop up on Space Ghost or the Teen Force. They all integrated together. Very cool show.
It was like a Hanna-Barbera superhero universe.
Yeah.
And it only lasted a season.
It was one season.
I remember absolutely loving that, and I was gonna thank you for reminding me. I was going to come back to that batch of Saturday morning cartoons from that era with Space Ghost and Herculoids and Frankenstein and the Impossibles.
Yes, Frankenstein Jr.
Frankenstein Jr. I apologize to Frankenstein.
We apologize to the original Frankenstein monster.
Yeah. But yeah, it was all, and one of my favorite things in the last few years is they have brought those guys back in comics. Their Future Quest is a series of comics where they've smooshed them all into their own universe. And
great.
One thing which reminds me that we have not mentioned at all is part of that universe in that comic book is Johnny Quest.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my gosh, Johnny Quest is I watched it, I think it originally came out in the 60s maybe.
Yeah.
But I watched the reruns because they kept showing those on regular Saturday morning TV. And what struck me is that people died and you could hit people, and you couldn't do that on any other Saturday morning cartoon.
That was children firing machine guns.
Yeah.
That was Johnny Quest.
Though Nathan reminded me of, we were talking about Challenge of the Super Friends. I guess, with the Alpha and the Omega, you could talk about how Saturday morning introduced people to the larger Marvel universe with Spider-Man and his Amazing Friends. And the Incredible Hulk in the 80s. And then in the 90s, you had Spider-Man and the X-Men were big. Those weren't weekday shows. Those were just on the weekends.
Yep.
And they were on at a time when everybody else had stopped doing Saturday morning cartoons, too.
That's true. The Fox network, we just did a panel last night about how the Fox canceled everything, every sci-fi thing on Friday night. But they did their own Saturday morning thing like the other networks had gotten out of doing. For several years, Fox had Fox Kids, I believe it was called, had a whole Saturday morning lineup of things, including Spider-Man and X-Men. And there was lots of Marvel stuff lots of gateway Marvel stuff in those.
Even though Batman was primarily a weekday show, they also had a Saturday. They played episodes on Saturday that weren't on the weekday run. So Batman the Animated Series was also part of that Fox Kids on Saturday.
I did not remember that. I remember the Spider-Man cartoon had the Punisher. Somehow they did the Punisher on Saturday morning.
He was the non-lethal Punisher, though. That he would have been convinced by Microchip not to use lethal force anymore. Yeah. So he was doing non-lethal.
He used a super soaker.
Right, exactly.
They also had Morbius. They had Daredevil. It was just like in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends did an Agatha Christie style episode called The Seven Little Superheroes, where you had Captain America and Sheena and Submariner, and it's just like, who are these people?
Never did. I wish they did. They did a bunch of other than Captain America, they were all the forgotten Golden Age characters, like the Blue Marvel and some other ones that. They didn't get any of the big name ones other than Captain America. I wish they had done Namor.
So much good stuff. We could and have and will again talk more about all of these things. But let's guys, thank you again. This is exactly the kind of thing we would be doing in person at DragonCon on Saturday morning at this time period.
This is what we miss the parade for every year.
Yes.
Right.
We used to say this. We would. I remember this has stuck with me, Kevin. The first year that we did this, you leaned into the microphone and said, "One thing we know about all of you here in this room is that you hate parades."
Yes.
It's a bunch of parade haters.
It's a special group of bitter, angry people. These are our people. Welcome.
But thank you guys very, very much. We're doing more stuff throughout the day. Just stay with us here on the Classic Track page, and let's Nathan, you did not get a chance to pimp your stuff. So please do that.
Yeah, so I'm the host of a podcast called The 42 Cast, which is your ultimate answer to fandom, geekiness, and everything. Basically, every episode is a new topic in geek media. It's just like a Dragon Con panel, except that you can only hear it. You can't see us, which is probably better in some ways. But you can find that at 42cast.com. I also co-host a podcast called Time Streams, where my friend Juliet and I are going through every episode of Doctor Who from the beginning. She's never seen any of the classic Doctor Who, and I've been watching it since I was 5, so there's some nice interplay between the two of us talking about it. And one thing I want to mention before we go is Robotics, which is the best Saturday morning cartoon you never saw.
With an X.
Yes, with an X. Yes.
Robotics with an X.
Yes.
Now, I saw that weekday afternoons. Robotics. It was the Robotics Bigfoot Adventure.
Yeah, but that was only on weekends. It was syndicated, but it was on weekends. It was never on weekdays.
Bigfoot.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
It all comes back to Bigfoot, and that's what I'm ending the thing on.